limited to this region. You're recording. That's good. Sorry, I forgot to do it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, I was. So anyway, how do you switch slides? Hang on. Well, so this is what I was basically just saying, but I skipped a slide. Hang on. Well, the other philosopher, Paul Venn, that is actually part of the readings, very simply shows how implotment is something that historians constantly do while they're analyzing historical facts. And this is a way to attribute weight and order to facts, and to insert them in a number of different relationships with the other facts that are being observed. So while they're addressing a problem, historians always choose one way of creating this plot, which is not the only possible way. We have been since after World War II, we have, especially in the French academic context, we have experienced different ways of making history. The classical historiographical approach is basically history centered on military events, centered on the actions of those who are in power. But more recently, in the past 60 to 80 years, history has also, historians have also created other ways, other plots to address historical facts, and namely adopting the perspective of the people, for example, in some instances, or even of the soldiers instead of the generals, while they approach military history. This has turned out to be very, very useful, because facts and the unfolding of reality does not only involve those who are in power and the generals, and it does not only include military events and invasions, etc., etc. History is also very much about the people, about what the people do, what the people are ready to do. So you can speak about the same century and plot it in very different ways. And lately, this way of creating different plots has also attracted attention on how the emplotment has to be the object of a conscious, reflexive work by the researcher, who will not just create a plot without thinking about what he is doing. He will have to justify his decisions about why he chose that particular approach and that particular plot to address a segment of reality. And this is what we will try to do also in the next sessions. We will try to decide, or at least construct an hypothesis about how we can emplot the election that we are going to observe. We already have been talking about this with Susan a little bit, but we will try to develop the plot together, and also to develop a number of subplots, which will basically tell us how the main plot is unfolding in practical terms in the Kenyan context. This will be more clear as soon as I show you examples about what we've been doing with other elections. The question that remains open is, how does this idea of plot contribute and help while addressing the election? And the answer to this is partly, at least, contained in the last text that I gave you. That was the one by Rancière. So Rancière, oh, sorry, there's a little mistake here. Rancière is looking at how basically how power and democracy work. What are we going to include in our plots? A number of key concepts that I will show you in a moment, and that all come from Rancière and other philosophers, political philosophers' ideas. The basic assumption behind Rancière and other texts is that power is always about a compromise. Power involves hierarchization in society. Hierarchization means that there are different groups that are organized on a scale where traditionally on the top you have those who rule, and on the bottom you have those who are ruled. The thing that it is important to stress is that each one of these groups, because there are many, ranging from those who really have absolute, absolute, those who are really on top of the pyramid and those who are at the bottom, there is a number of intermediary levels. What happens throughout these levels is a nuance between two necessities and two tendencies. So those who are on top, they have the incredible and concocted privilege of ruling, of being able to give orders to others, which, as you might know, for human beings is a source of satisfaction and self-fulfillment in itself, I mean, at least for some human beings. So those who are on top have this privilege, but they also tend to have a problem, which is accountability. They have to answer for their actions. The more people they dominate, the more they will have to, in different ways and in different forms and also in variable degrees, but they will have to answer to them. They will be responsible for what they're doing in front of them. This is always true, or it's true even in Putin's Russia. It's true in every situation. If there is not a minimum amount of consensus, it is impossible to rule over a population. It is impossible. It has, history has shown this extensively. You cannot really impose a rule without at least a little bit talking to the people. It can be very violent, it can be very coercive, but there always is a physiological limit beyond which it is impossible to go as far as absolutism is concerned. So those who are on top, they have the privilege of giving orders and being obeyed, but they also have the disadvantage of accountability and responsibility for what they're doing. As soon as you start going down the pyramid, what happens? People are less and less entitled to rule, to give orders. They will rather have to obey the orders of those who are above them. But on the other hand, they will be increasingly deresponsabilized. What does this mean? This is an aspect that is very interesting in my opinion, and it's hardly ever put into evidence, I mean, hardly shown. As long as you go down this pyramid, what happens is that somebody is taking care of you, basically. The state, the government. This is also very much in different and variable forms, but you are deresponsabilized progressively. So what is politics? Politics is, and what is power, is basically about the definition of a compromise. Each one of these groups I mentioned, from the top to the bottom, will try to increase their privileges and reduce their disadvantages. Those who are on top will try to make their power more absolute and to have more and more the possibility to give orders and being obeyed by others. And they will try to reduce as much as they can their accountability. They will try to find ways where this responsibility that comes from power is taken off their shoulders in one way or another. The groups that are more in the lower parts of the hierarchy, they will also try to increase their advantage, which is deresponsabilization. So they will try to make it to they will work to have somebody taking care of them as much as possible. So to be deresponsabilized. Deresponsabilization is being inserted in a political and economic system where you're not obliged to take care of all aspects of your own life. The difference, and then it's all a matter of nuances. But we can somehow imagine a primitive state of society where everybody had to take care of all of his own needs by himself. But this is not even close to tribal organizations, or it's much before that. Everybody is by himself. You have to take care of your food, you have to take care of your security, you have to take care of all aspects that are essential for your life. The fact that we live in society and that we have a political hierarchy and structures of power allows us not to be obliged to take care of all these aspects. Somebody is printing money for us, so transactions can happen, let's say, more easily in some ways. Somebody is providing services for us in variable degrees of efficiency, etc. But we don't have to possibly entirely care about producing our own food. Somebody's producing it for us, we can just buy it. Security might also be in different levels and degrees, but guaranteed by somebody that's outside us. So the strata of society that are lower in the hierarchic scale will try to increase the amount of deresponsabilizations that they have. So to have more services, more healthcare, more help, let's say, from the government or from institutions that are maintained by the political order, and they will try to decrease their disadvantage. Their disadvantage is basically the fact that they have to obey someone. So they will try to be as much free as they can be. So politics and the political systems that we have today are the result of a compromise between all these groups. It is very important to take into account that all the political systems that we have, democracy itself, are the result of an evolution that actually stems from a situation where there were people who were naturally leading society without being elected or without going through anything that even distantly looked like a democratic process. We have that Rancière is another very interesting aspect of what he says is that he shows a particular moment in the evolution of these political systems, which actually is very important to understand what I just said. Meaning that what I just said is that the states, the democratic systems that we have today, actually come from a very different situation. Basically, all European countries used to be kingdoms. We have early forms of democracy in different contexts, but you could hardly say about most of them that they were egalitarian democracies. They were rather oligarchies. as Rancière is saying. Even the Greeks, when they were, having their voting sessions, etc., the only ones that would be allowed to vote were the actual citizens. And being a citizen of Athens was not like being an Italian or a Kenyan citizen today. It was not a right that was granted to every person. It was a right that was granted only to those who had a certain social level, and below these people, there was a vast amount of population who were slaves and and strangers, foreigners, or people who didn't have citizens' right because they were too poor. So these were oligarchic situations, and Rancière stresses that even the democracy that we have today is actually an oligarchy. We are, and he bases this idea on the fact that there is a tendency to privatize the public sphere by the people. By definition, everything in England used to belong to the Queen. Everything. Property was only her own domain. She would grant rights over a certain amount of land, over a certain type of trade to people, but she would still be the owner of everything. So progressively, there has been, successful attempts to break this way of approaching the idea of property. It's also very complex because the Queen was owning everything. Yes. Do you want to say something, Dixon? No. I'm sorry. I'll make this quick. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm taking a bit too long, but Rancière looks at this transition from direct democracy to representative democracy, and he uses this transition to stress how actually even democracy is the result of this compromise between these different groups, and there is no perfect democratic system. And particularly the representative system has a lot of flaws because it will only allow for selected circle of people to access power. It is true that they are supposed to be representatives of the rest of the population, but you can see every day that there might be a very big distance between the representative and the people he represents. And also that these representatives are usually all come from the higher classes, higher levels of society, usually, and not always. There are exceptions, but at least as far as education is concerned, they have to have a significant level of education to be able to access the political arena, for example. So representation, according to Rancière, is an oligarchic form of power itself. Do you have any questions? Is this all clear?
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're formulating this, the plot for this coming election, how does it compare with the previous work that you've done, maybe from, not necessarily from the 2017 Kenyan one, even from the other areas of research you've gone to? Has it helped you develop a plot or such?
Well, it's very interesting. This year we have two elections where there is a treachery involved. In Angola, we have, Angola was ruled by Eduardo dos Santos, who is sorry?
No, it's someone else.
Okay. He's the leader of the independentist movement, and he was in power until the election before this one. In the election before this one, he nominated a successor, just like Kenyatta nominating Ruto. And then the successor turned against him. So in this election, Dos Santos is supporting his former rival, and it's very interesting because the party that was under the control of Dos Santos is now under the control of his successor, and it was a party that is traditionally a socialist party. It was financed and connected to Cuba during the civil war that followed the independence, and it was fighting against another militia, which became a party, which was financed by the United States, and now Dos Santos has switched his support to this formerly, American connected party, because his successor has, during his mandate, the last mandate, he has made the life of Dos Santos' children really difficult. And Dos Santos' children are those who own everything in Angola, oil companies, etc., etc. So they control the economy. The successor of Dos Santos, which, by the way, there is a little trivial story, because apparently Dos Santos had a relationship with the wife of this man, who, after he decided to nominate as his successor, not probably Dos Santos was a bit naive, and he thought that giving him this title would calm his desire to actually avenge this little sentimental problem they had. And no, the successor really, was, as soon as he was elected, with the endorsement of Dos Santos, he totally turns against it. And so now we have this situation where, like Kenyatta is supporting Odinga, we have Dos Santos supporting the opposition party in Angola. So this is something that strikes me immediately about this election in Kenya. Then, well, there is an interesting feature of Ruto, which is also common to other contexts that we have seen, which is this this charismatic way of trying to incarnate change, which we have seen in quite a lot of different elections that have been taken place lately. I'm thinking a lot lately about Madagascar, what we saw there in 2018, which was a situation where we had a guy who was also supposed to incarnate change, and he won. And he is the actual president of Madagascar. And what we have seen is that he was not as quick and efficient in promoting change as he promised. Actually, he was probably elected with a strong support from the royal family. Madagascar has a royal house, and there was a huge level of dissatisfaction with representative politics in Madagascar, to the point that some people were actually invocating the return of absolute monarchy. And it was a strange situation where the monarchy abandoned their former the links that they had with the old political class, and they helped the emergence of this new guy. And then the new guy is not as new as it seems. So this is another. We will have to look closely to Ruto, because what I have seen. Also, look at France. France, what happened with Macron, not in this election, but in the one before. Macron was a nobody. He was maybe 4 or 5 months before the election. His party had maybe less than 5% of the voting intentions. Uh, what happened after that was that the traditional right-wing party in France was destroyed by a scandal. At least this is what was given to the people. The leader of the party was accused of having given positions to his wife or daughter or both of them in some state organization, and so they were saying he was corrupt and he was giving favors to his family, etc. So the entire party actually collapsed because of this, and there is a significant episode where Macron was approached by minor members of the old right-wing party and also by representatives of the economic establishment, who went to see him and they said, what are we going to do now? There is no more right-wing party. The voting intentions for the Républicain, the traditional right-wing party, are 3%. What are we going to do now? We need a new guy. We need a new face. And they gave him support because they also have significant stakes in the media. So Macron was provided with a lot of media space. He became the representative of this new French center right. He was able to gather a lot of votes. So he had this, before he became this big, he had this message where he was saying, I'm neither left-wing nor right-wing. He was advocating a lot of change in French politics, etc., etc. But then he actually managed to become the president thanks to the support also of these people groups who approached him and gave him media support, gave him money for his campaign. And then once he came to power, he was much more cautious and slow in implementing any form of change than he had actually promised. So it is very common that even these charismatic leaders who promise change have to go into some sort of compromise. So I think that's one thing we will have to look into as far as Ruto is concerned. The ideas of plots that we have already conceived are basically all revolving around the idea of the ancient dynastic Kenyan order, which today is more than ever cohesive and compact on one side of the political arena. Kenyatta and Odinga together. This is, I mean, I look at Kenya quite often, but I'm not a Kenyan, so I'm not into this progressive situation where this arrived slowly. In my idea, Kenya is the Kenya of the past election, where Kenyatta and Odinga were not together at all, and now they're together. So, and what is very interesting is that even in the last election, we were really our main plot idea was centered on the idea of a dynastization of power. We had two dynasties, the Odingas and the Kenyatta on the other side. Now we have dynastization versus the newcomers, the hustler. We will have to find ways to define him and to understand what Ruto is doing. But I think it will be very interesting. He really stands a chance to make it, and we will see how and what price eventually he might have to pay to actually reach power. There is always a price. We will see. But this you have to tell me rather than vice versa, because I only have a distant view of what is happening over there. Just to finish with these ideas expressed by Rancière, one other central concept is that the vote itself is, rather than a process of through choice, is a procedure which is mainly important because of the legitimacy it gives to those who are in power. The political system is legitimated by the fact that people will go and vote, no matter who they vote for. In fact, in France, there is a huge problem. At the last election, 54% of the voters did not go to vote. We only had a turnout of 46% of voters, not of the population. So it's really small. It's smaller than most African countries I have been looking at lately. Participation in Europe is at an historical low, and there is a crisis as far as the legitimacy of our political leaders is concerned. Macron has become the president. He was possibly actually something like 20 to 25% of voters that voted for him at the second term, where he had maybe 54% of the total votes, but it's 54% of 46%, so it's something like 20 to 25% of people who have voted for it. That's not much to base your power on. So a central aspect of the electoral process is the idea of legitimization of the leadership. And we will go later to look rapidly at how this is important for the leaders. Even more than winning the election is the fact that they have to construct their legitimacy, no matter what the result of the vote is. Another idea that Rancière expresses, and it is pretty hard to completely grasp, even for me, but it has something useful in it, is that the idea of representation has its duplicity. It is true that the group chooses a representative, which is going to represent it, but representing someone also means that you actually take his place in a way, and that you actually the group that has elected the leader is somehow constituted by the leader himself. It revolves around him, and it is consolidated by the leader itself. And during an election, you have a group of citizens who will vote for example, William Ruto. But once William Ruto or Odinga have won the election, they will have to become the leaders of the entire country, and they will have to incarnate the entire country. And one thing that is particularly interesting to us is how these leaders change between the campaign and the moment where they actually are sworn into position. It is part of their quest for legitimacy. Possibly the most difficult thing to do for a leader is to find a compromise between how far I will go in polarizing things during the campaign. The more I polarize them during the campaign, the harder it's going to be for me to, after I have won, be perceived as the leader of the entire country. So what is very interesting for us is to look at how the leaders work to gain legitimacy during the campaign, and on what kind of ideas they construct their legitimacy before the votes and then after the results are presented to the population. I will switch to the next and last slide. So the plot that we have looked earlier into will have to be declined according to these concepts that I have given to you through Rancière's views, but that are also very easily, translated into this little slide which basically says that the election is not basically about what happens during the votes. It is really not very interesting to look at the numeric result of the vote. It is obviously an important factor in most situations. It is the factor that will actually decide who is going to be the leader. It was not the case in Kenya in 2017, in the 16. It was the case when they repeated the election. So even in Kenya, the numeric victory might not be enough to actually be in power. This was actually proven in the last election. So election is a very complex procedure through which society produces its leaders. That's it. It stops there. We don't want to go further than that in defining the election. And the votes, analyzing the vote itself is not sufficient to understand the election as a whole. As far as legitimation is concerned, that's another key word. How is legitimation constructed by the leaders? How do they manage to incarnate the group? For this, it is really important to keep in mind that democracy, different forms of democracy, stem from situations where some were able to lead societies because of natural attributes. You know, this is common to all societies throughout the world. There are some who lead and some who are led. And traditionally, in human societies, these roles have been assigned according to things that are connected to nature, kinship, heritage, etc., etc. So we come from hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of situations where we have lived like this. Democracy works in a different way. You're supposed to go to the polling station, to put the cross on your bulletin, and then there is a numeric procedure that gives you the leader. In truth, we did not get rid of what we call, and is very important for a project, the immanent forms of power. Immanent forms of power are connected, for example, to wealth, age, knowledge, kinship, or even charisma, such as possibly William Ruto is incarnating. And what happens during the election is that the leaders, the candidates, convert forms of immanent power into political capital. This is something that is really central to our analysis, and this is something that we will have to look at while we build the plots. The plot will somehow try to describe how these ingredients, legitimation, immanent power, are functioning in Kenya in this particular election. Well, we have something practical about the project, but this is it. Do you have any questions or remarks before we will have a quick break, maybe? What do you think?
No question. 15 minutes break, yeah?
Sorry, I want to see you. Okay. Oh, no questions. This is. Go ahead, please.
I was saying I don't have a question for now. Maybe if everything is clear, we can take maybe a 15 minutes break.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. You have your tea and stuff there, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And at what time do you have to go for lunch? Is there a precise time? What did they say?
No, it's us to decide.
Okay. But I suppose it's going to be around 12 or 1 p.m., something like that.
Yeah, 12:30, between 12:30 and 1.
Okay, so it's 11:15. Let's have a 15 minutes break. And at 11:30 we meet again, then we go for another hour or so, and then it's time for lunch. Huh?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. I'll profit to make. I'll leave the connection on in the room here. I'll just mute it, and I have to. Somebody is calling me terribly. I have to make a phone call and make a coffee. So you enjoy your tea and refreshment, guys. Except for Dixon, who is. But Dixon seems to be in a nice place anyway. So.
He's where?
Oh, it's in-
He's in a good 90s.
We'll send you tea emojis over the chat.
Okay, I'll be with you again in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Fine.
I'm ready when you are, guys. Huh? Maybe Dixon is not. There he is. Okay. Okay. Is there anything you would like to say about what I said earlier? I've tried to give you a little bit of our methodological basis that we are adopting in the project. They will become more clear, but do you have anything you want to say or to ask about what we said? Oh, okay. Well, so the next part of what we're going to do is starting to look at EleQta, at our IT platform. I mentioned earlier briefly that your work will consist of 3 different operative modes, okay? And you will see that EleQta reflects this structure. One is the archival work, which is more long-term. We ask you to really try to cover the information that is circulating in Kenyan society about the election for this whole 2 months period, possibly 2 months. Who knows what will happen after the election, but it should be around 2 months. And also to try and go fish into the past a little bit, if possible, while entering this information. The Kenyan election has started actually months ago, when I first approached Susan to propose her to supervise the team. There were already a lot of information being spread about the relationship between Kenyatta and Ruto, about what's going on, and Kenyatta. And now lately I've seen this thing at the beginning of June, which is really, really a strong Kenyatta strongly taking position next to Odinga and really sweeping away poor William Ruto. So anyway, this is one of the parts, is the archival. The archival is big. Everything can go in there. One really basic important thing is that we're not looking for the truth. We are very interested also in fake news, false information, misleading information that might be spread, because it is significant to us as much as the so-called truth, which hardly ever emerges in an electoral situation. So we really encourage you to put everything you can into the archive, as much as you can, and anything goes, even rumor itself, when it's not relayed by media. It doesn't matter. I'll show you. We have a special rumor option in the source, where you have to say what the source of your information is. So we can use that. So archival. And then there's mission work. Mission work is we send you to the mission area. We decide together what the area will be and when you will go. And you will spend a day on the mission area for each mission, doing observation and interview work. And this will happen 3 times throughout the entire period. So we estimate that you will have 1 day of work and possibly another day to enter the data into the EleQta platform, which makes a total of 6 days of work for the mission part. And that leaves you about, we estimate something like 10 days of work for this whole thing. So 6 days for the missions, being on the field and entering the information. 4 days for working on the archive, which means half a day for 8 weeks. We'll see how this goes. It can evolve differently. We will see. Each one of you has a budget which is allocated to him or to her. We don't ask you to be very precise in telling us how you spend the money. The budget is meant to help you out with the expenses that that you will have that you will have because of the work, namely to buy some internet connection and to you know, travel, eat while you're in the missions, etc., etc. But the rest of it is for you as a remuneration. So you know, you don't have to be very specific with us about how this money is being spent. We really encourage you to be responsible about it, which means to not limit the amount of resources that will be given to the project. You will probably, at the end of the day, you will probably, since you're not compelled to travel very far because of your missions, you won't be spending nights somewhere, etc. So you will probably, at the end of the day, you will be able to keep a significant amount of what is given to you for a remuneration for yourself. The spirit of the project is also one where you become part of a network which keeps existing. Now, most of you don't really have a career in research, so the benefits from being part of this network for you will somehow be a little bit limited, because it's basically a network where we can, you know, share information that will be used to publish stuff, articles, etc. So you may or may not benefit so much from this, but still you will be part of the network. You will be updated regularly about what we're doing, etc., etc. I will show you a little bit how it works. Then we will also give you a little, you know, proof of what you have been doing. I will also provide you papers that will certify that you're working for us. So if you have any problems during your missions or at any time, you can use the papers to certify that you're doing research work and possibly avoid being hassled by the police or whoever might give you problems. We will, so it is not a situation where we're giving you a lot of money to do little work. It's a situation where we ask you to use your own critical and analytical capacities, keep your brain on, focus also on the areas, the media that you are most interested in. It is very useful to have diverse teams like we have today, because, you know, we have a social media manager here who will possibly be the one who will, you know, who will do the most in that respect. Then I don't know, we have Jacqueline, who maybe can, I know that the farming community in Kenya plays an important role, also in politics, etc. So, you know, we might use Jacqueline's background to get a better get an insight on that part of the Kenyan society, etc., etc. So we will try to adapt the inquiries also to your personal needs, including the fact that some of you might want to vote, so they cannot be too far from their voting place on the election day. And by the way, the mission area can also be the place where you vote, will also be the place where you vote, I expect, at least in some cases. So to go a little bit rapidly into the practical aspects of the project, let's go see the platform. I have sent you your IDs, your, how you say, your username and password to each one of you. You don't really have to connect right now, but if you want, feel free to do it on your laptops. One question: do you all have laptops?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just to know, because EleQta works also on mobile phones, but it's more practical to use it on a laptop for amounts of reasons. You will see. It works fine on both, but then you might need to upload files, etc., which works also on your phones, and we encourage you to do it as much as you want. But the computer, at least from my point of view, is sometimes a bit more practical, also for writing things, etc. So you're free to use either one or both. All the work you do on your phone, you will be able to resume it from your laptop, and vice versa. Since you're entering data into a database which is remote, you can do it. Even you can work even on the same data entries with two different devices. You can firstly, if you're on the field, maybe take a picture, upload it rapidly, and then go back to it to comment and add all the other bits of information that we ask you to add to it. But I will go into it so I can show you. So EleQta is developed to work on Google Chrome, but it also works on, as far as I've seen, I've never encountered any problems on other browsers such as Edge or Firefox or Safari for Mac users. If you experience problems, then we encourage you to install and use Google Chrome, which is what it was initially developed for. But you'll see. I mean, you don't have to install any particular browser in your computer if you don't want to, unless you really have problems. What I will do is I will connect with one of your users, so I can show you what it looks like to you. Hold on, let me find the. I'll also share my screen, but first. Sorry, give me a minute or so, a second or so. Voilà. I will use I don't know if I should use no, I'll use Tindy's account, for example. There are a few minor differences between the accounts of the two veterans in the team and the accounts of the new members, because the veterans will also see the previous election that we've been working on, which is actually 2 elections because it was held twice. So, but I will try to explain them what the difference is, and it's not a big deal anyway. So let me share my screen. There it goes. And record also. Ask the host to give you permission to record. Maybe Susan, you have to start the recording on your side because I cannot.
It's already recorded.
Okay. So if I. But it says I have to ask your permission. So maybe you can start the recording yourself, or does it work? There's a lot of videos, also tutorials who explain how EleQta works. it's not a big deal because we have a tutorial video which is already there and explains exactly what I'm gonna say. Ah, but that was recording. Ah, okay, okay. Ah, but it was recording from. Okay, I'm sorry. So how do I share the screen? It was. Where is it? I might add share. Yes, it's quite big also. Okay, so do you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I connected to this web address. So EleQta works through the internet. Okay, it's a browser application. If you don't have internet connection, EleQta doesn't work yet. We are trying to get it to work without connection, but it's not easy, and we still haven't managed to find a way to do it. So internet connection is a must. This can actually be a little bit of a problem in some cases because internet access during electoral periods can sometimes experience more or less voluntary breakdowns. So let's hope it's not going to be too much the case for Kenya. If it is the case, we will have to work a little bit more traditionally. All the data that is going to be entered into EleQta can be entered on spot or later on. It depends on, you're completely free to do as you prefer. You can be adopt a more traditional approach and take notes and then upload later the data to EleQta, or you can just hang out with your phone and do some of the work directly while you are on the field, while you are exposed to some kind of information in their everyday life, etc., etc. So login screen, this is pretty simple. You connect, and now I'm using Tindy's account so I can see what you see. Bizarrely enough, Tindy is also, which should not be the case, but Tindy can also see the Kenya 2017 general election, which is not what we're going to use and inquire about. I might actually eliminate this part so you only have one election to choose between, because you see that next to each election you have a button that leads you to the elections page, which is the place where you basically enter the data. So if you click on the wrong button, the data you enter will go into the wrong election. So you have to be careful here. If you have the choice, you choose Kenya 2022. I think I will, for every one of you, deactivate the Kenya 2017 election, which means you won't be able to see the data about the election for a little while. But while we work, it might be easier to just have one choice here, so there's no risk to make mistakes. Anyway, by clicking on this button, I access the main page where I can enter the data. And as you see here, we have three colors that are connected to the three different modes of data collection. So the orange is for the archival data, and then you have blue for the mission observation data and green for the mission interviews. Do you see my mouse too? Yes, you should. My pointer, yes, okay. So over here, you have a list of missions, which for now, for each one of you contains only one mission, which I've called the test mission. This is a mission we will use to play around during the briefings, and then I will delete it. So you can really enter whatever type of data you want in here. It's not going to be a problem. The archival data is already the final archive. So it's not a problem if you make a mistake. Data can always be deleted. But be a bit more careful when you play around with this part of EleQta, because you're already working with the true archive of the election. Up here, you can see that we have a place where we are going to write down the plot and subplot hypothesis. I have already entered a half idea we had with Susan about, hustlers versus the dynasty, but we will go on discussing about the plot hypothesis and the subplots, and then at the end we will have a chat with the boss, with Remy, about them, and we'll see what he thinks. And so we have to prepare something consistent by Thursday. Then I will go later into details. What I want to show you first is that in many places in EleQta's page, you have these little question marks. And if you click on them, there is an explanation about what this part of the page means. So what is archival data? It gives you a very quick explanation of how it works. It might be useful to orient yourself at the beginning to use these little question marks. There's a lot of explanations all over EleQta. Don't be scared, you're free to use them, but you don't have to look into all of them. There is a very extensive help section, which is accessible from the links on top, but also on the bottom of each page. And if you access it, you can see there's different resources that you can use. The first one, well, it says that there's the question mark icons that you can use, and then there is the research manual, which I have already sent to you, which is the main source of information for what we are going to do. It is quite long. It explains in detail everything about the platform. And the first chapter, which you might have already looked into, is about the method, the research method, and what we do in the project. Roughly what I have tried to explain you this morning. And then there is a quite useful page with tutorial videos about EleQta, which are 7, 8. Yes, the one about the validation, I will prepare it anyway. The data validation is something we have to do at the end, but you can see there's a number of different tutorials here which reflect more or less what they will explain you in the next 2 days, but it might be always useful to refresh or come back, etc. Some are short, like logging in and managing your user. Some are a bit longer, and some are very long. So voilà. But they're there and they might be useful. Just very rapidly, up here, each one of you, once he or she is connected, will find his own name. If you click on the name, you will be able to manage some aspects of your user. So by clicking on edit here, you can change your first name and family name. I hope I got them right, but if there's any mistakes, you tell me also. But I think I mean it was not very complicated in your case. So well, you can also, EleQta exists in French and Portuguese too. So if you feel free to use French or Portuguese if you want, but I don't know if it's going to be interesting. Your time zone, this is very important because when you enter data, you will leave metadata footprints about when it has been done, etc. And it's important for EleQta to know which time zone you're operating in. And you can also change your password if you want. I have assigned you a password, but you can change it. Feel free. We even encourage you to do it. Try not to use just your first name as a password. Use something a bit, not exaggeratedly complex, but try to be a little bit careful about this. And I think there's some terrible things you have to respect if you change the password. You see symbols, blah blah. So it's already annoying enough automatically. So how does EleQta work? EleQta basically asks you to enter data. In case of Kenya, we are really lucky because we have already been working on Kenya. So EleQta's data, as I told you earlier, consists of two big chapters. The data that is gathered on the field, and then the dossier, which are little, I don't have a better word than dossier for them in English. So a dossier contains information about a political actor, which can be a person, it can be an organization, including companies, state branches, international organization. It could be a social group, such as an ethnic group or a lobby or some kind of grouping that exists in society and that might be susceptible of playing a role in the political life of Kenya. It might be hang on, let me see what it might be, because if you click on dossier, you access a page where you already have a list of dossiers that exists for Kenya, and there's 128, which is a good number. We might have to add a few dossiers before we start our research campaign. It is possible to add the dossiers while you are doing your campaign, and we actually encourage you to do it if you stumble upon a political actor which doesn't have a dossier already and is susceptible to play a significant role. So if you click on this button, you access a list of the types and subtypes of dossier which exist. Let me make it a bit bigger. So as you see, the yellow boxes are the types, and then the green ones are the subtypes. So we have persons, which are divided among politicians, organization representatives, government agency representatives, eminent leaders, which refers to those who hold eminent power, which I mentioned earlier. Eminent power is our eminent power. Forms of power are the forms of power that are present within society, independently from the political democratic context. Religious power, technocratic power, which means knowledge, charisma, stemming from the fact of being the father of the independence, any form of power which is not stemmed from a democratic electoral process. And then there's always a case, a place where you can enter other persons who are playing a significant role on the political scene, but don't fit into any of these other classifications here. Another type is the organizations, which are divided among political parties, unions, companies, meaning private companies, public also, but I mean, not, I mean, companies like enterprises, like then associations and NGO. Then there's private security organizations, which sometimes might be significant in electoral contexts. Militias are more or less organized armed forces that are present on the territory but not part of the official army. Then a church or a sect is also a form of organization. Then there are international organizations and other types of organizations. Groups are divided among, and we're talking about social groups, forms of identity, which are upheld by the people in one way or another. So it can be ethnic, it can be religious, it can be an interest group also, farmers, industrialists, etc., etc. These groups do not necessarily have to have their own hierarchies, leaders, etc. This is more about identities that people will uphold or mention when you ask them about what their identity is, for example. Then among the political actors, we also have the media, which are divided among daily newspapers, non-daily press, printed, radio stations, TV channels, social networks, news websites, which are distinguished from social networks and other websites because they declare being managed by journalists and by staff who follows the code of journalism, which usually implies that you mention your sources, not maybe by name, but you are committed to providing truthful information in a way, and everything that journalists do. These distinctions are sometimes not so clear. The work we are doing here is trying to classify things that are not always easy to classify. So your own good sense is always involved. If you have doubts about any type of decision, you are encouraged to involve me and the rest of the team in your doubts, and we will try to find a solution. We always, every time we do a new inquiry, stumble upon new stuff and we don't know exactly where to put it. So don't be afraid, it's normal. And the system we are developing here is evolving. Even Susan and Dixon might see, actually Kenya has been a significant testing ground for EleQta, and it has had a lot of evolution between the two Kenyan campaigns and then also later on. But I think that Susan and Dixon will recognize most of what they see, if not everything so far. I think the dossier structure didn't really change so much. Then we have non-news websites. So these are all the other websites who are not social networks and who are not, who don't say that they're being managed by journalists. Then there's other media, other types of media stumble upon. Another type of dossier is a government agency, which are divided among electoral institutions, public security forces, which includes the army, etc., police, then ministries and departments of the government, and then elements of the judiciary branch, not people, but organization, the Supreme Court, public prosecutor offices, etc., etc., and other government agency which might fit in here. This is a place where we usually put also the chambers of the parliament, the presidency, etc. This is only if they really play a role in the political life as agencies. We're not talking about the president or the head of the parliament, but really the agencies themselves. We have also two other types of dossier, which are used in a little bit of a different way. One is the polling stations. Polling stations, you will only enter the dossier for the polling station that you will be assigned to, let's say, in terms of your mission. You will not have to really necessarily look into the polling station, etc., but your mission area will contain one or maybe more than one polling stations, and we would like you to enter them in here. And then there is a particular section which is called My Dossier, and these are connected to each user. And one of them is the dossier for the people you interview. When you interview someone, you have to create a dossier for him or her. The dossier must not include any information that can help to identify the person directly, including his name and surname. You will use numeric code. We will go into this later. but you have to try and enter some basic information about the person: age, job, where he or she lives, etc. There is another subtype here that are the dossiers that need to be completed. This is a category where EleQta automatically puts all the dossiers that you create rapidly in the data entry pages. When you're entering data and you find some information about I don't know, the first lady, and she doesn't have a dossier, you can create it really rapidly while entering the data. But then you have to complete the dossier by entering additional information about the person or actor that you have created a new dossier for. So let me show you briefly how they work. Those, I guess Ruto has a dossier there, but we will, yes, he does. You see up here, this is generic EleQta functioning. The data is usually arranged in tables like this one. Tables include different columns. You can order the data by clicking on the top of each column. I'm sorry if I'm giving you information that you already know about. Stop me if it's too basic. I just explain everything because in some cases people are not very familiar even with basic features of this kind of interface. So if you click on the head of the column, you can order the dossiers depending on their number, for example, or the name, description, or by type. You can, up here, you can decide how many dossiers you want in one page. You can go up to 100. So if you do that, you see that your page will extend much further. I was wondering, that's interesting. There's been dossiers entered. No, this must be the second campaign. Okay. Well, anyway. And then there's a very useful link up here, a box up here, which allows you to search for stuff. For example, I was looking for Ruto, and I found two Mr. Ruto. One is Isaac, and the other is our friend William. Okay, and then I also see his party because he is mentioned in the description. So EleQta has found this. I will show you how can we. I would like to perform a dossier entry with you. Who could we? I'll just go generically through a dossier entry page, and then we will maybe work out a few dossiers to enter together. But we will.
Pietro.
Yes.
We can create one more dossier. There's actually one political leader, presidential candidate, who is very influential. Actually, he's going to alter the dynamics of everything. Okay. Yeah, so we can do that together.
All right. What's his name?
Is Professor Wajakoya. You'll have a hard time taking that down.
Okay. Let's do one thing. Why don't you do it?
Yeah.
Susan, you have the laptop you have in front of you. Is it connected also to the meeting?
Yes. No. It's not. It's not connected to the meeting, but I can change it from. I can do the actual changes here.
You can access EleQta, but can you share your screen on the meeting so I can see what you're doing? Maybe you have to connect as a user.
Okay, let me do that.
Because I would like you to use your, even each one of you could do it. Could take out his laptop, and this could be already an exercise if you want. And each one of you finds a dossier, a person or an actor that doesn't already have a dossier, and he enters, he or she enters this new actor. I don't know if Dixon, you might have some more problems because of.
Yeah, there's a blackout over here.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and my computer doesn't retain a lot of battery.
Forget it. Don't
So-
worry. Don't worry.
Okay, okay.
We will share anyway. We will share Susan's screen. So while she does this work, we can see what she does. But Susan and Dixon, you have already a significant degree of familiarity with all this. But let's do it on one of your computers because it's more useful, I think, than if we do it on mine. So what I will also do is I will disconnect my, oh no, yes, because I am Tindi, which is not, I'm disconnecting myself. I will create a fake user.
Yes, I've had that one.
Just give me a minute to set up.
Yes, take your time, don't worry. Meanwhile, I am also looking at this thing where you all see both elections, which is not very practical.
Okay.
So can I link a Zoom? The Zoom, yeah, the Zoom.
Watch me. Because I want to share the screen. Switch off.
There it is.
Yeah.
Good.
So we do it together.
Yes. Sorry, I was finishing creating a fake user for myself. This one. Okay. So let's go. You are where's Zoom? There it is. Okay. So yeah, just click on add a new dossier. If Tindy and Jacqueline have another idea about somebody, they can enter him or her, but don't worry. Or if you don't, just do it along with Susan, and we'll, and then we will do some exercises on the last days. So don't worry. So as you can see, there is small question marks all over the page. You can use them whenever you want. They will explain you really in detail how to choose a type and subtype, etc. So in this case, it's a person, it's a politician, I guess, because it's one of the candidates. And voila. And so the full name has to be written, surname and name separated by a comma. Okay.
George.
You understand him?
Surname is Wajakoya.
So,
WAJA. CKYAH.
then comma, George.
Professor George.
So okay, can you add new dossier to show you all, it will show you all the names?
Yeah, so we drop down.
Yes, be careful when you enter somebody's name. It has to be exactly like this: surname, comma, name, family name, comma, name. Don't use all capitals if possible, which is more of a French habit, but voilà. So EleQta also asks you, take one aspect into account. In general terms, EleQta has a lot of entry fields, whether it's in the dossier or in the data entry pages. You are encouraged to fill in as much information as you can, but you don't have to. Very few fields are actually compulsory, you will see. So acronyms and other names are useful to EleQta to identify the person across other texts. For example, if the guy has a nickname, he is usually known by, or yeah, the professor, for example. The fifth. What is it? The fifth?
It's his nickname. He's already styled himself the fifth president.
Ah, okay. I see. Okay. A description can be a short sentence that helps. You have to take into account that the data you enter in EleQta will be used by people who are not necessarily familiar with the Kenyan politics. So just, here you can just answer one of the potential candidates in the 2022 election, for example, which is what you told me.
Former NIS, former special branch officer. Next slide.
Oh. Special branch, meaning he was in the army or something like that?
That was the name of the intelligence services before it changed. During the 90s, yeah.
All right.
Then say.
President, daddy. Marijuana advocate. That's his own platform.
That's how he gets the votes. It's good.
Yes, I present. Aspiring. Third
Presidential aspirant.
Okay, and take into account that the dossiers will survive during the next elections. So you should third wave presidential aspirant at the 2022 election. You should mention this because the next time.
Recruit party candidate.
yeah.
That's better.
Also, yes. Party candidate. Yeah. Okay. Roots party. All right.
So, but
and mention the 2022 election. Mention it somewhere at the end. Doesn't. So people will know, because maybe in the next presidential election we will. Well, surely have another research campaign, and great, perfect. Then here you can if necessary and interesting, it might be relevant to enter information about where he comes from, especially for those who have a special link with their own place of origin. It's an electoral fief or any kind of. But it's not compulsory. The dossiers are tools that are rather used as a way to create links among data entries that you will create later. So we don't really need to, if somebody wants to find information about Professor Wajakoya, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, exactly.
Wajakoya.
Professor Wajakoya, he will go to Wikipedia and find them. I mean, it's not what we are here to do. What we're here to do is create a dossier which will be mentioned every time that we enter data, inquiry data about him, so that later on somebody can fish, do a data search, and immediately call up all the data that concerns this guy, for example. So, and then here you see there's other fields, background and other information. We encourage you to really fill this in only if it's really relevant and only for the most important personalities, okay? The fact, you already put it in the description, it was pretty interesting to know that he was a former member of the Secret Services, but it's already there in the description, so it doesn't matter to, but this could also have been a piece of information that could have gone into the background information, but it doesn't matter, it's fine, really, don't worry too much about this. He was born in Western Kenya, that's what they know. One important
He was actually born in Uganda, but comes from Western Kenya.
Ah, okay. Well, you could put origin Western Kenya. He was born in Uganda. That's interesting.
Ginger.
I mean, because Uganda is particularly, I see why he is in the Secret Service.
Kakamega County.
Okay. Great. Then, if you scroll down, you have another place which is pretty interesting, and that's the connections to other dossiers. This is important because this will allow us to extend the web of relations that we create between our data entries. For example, this guy is part of a party, the Roots Party. I guess this party has a dossier. So you should, the dossier for the professor should be connected to the dossier for the party. And to do this, you have to create a relation between these two dossiers. And exactly, you search. So if you type roots, it should come up. If it already exists.
It doesn't exist because it's a new party.
It doesn't have a, okay, it doesn't matter. Then we're going to create it later and we're going to establish the relation on the other side. So we have another dossier that we need to create. Okay, that's good. Does he have any relationship with maybe the Secret Services or?
He has a relationship with a former
Foreign Affairs Minister. They were assassinated during Moi era.
Ah, yeah. Let's see if he has a dossier. Ah.
Yeah,
around Moi.
Okay, so if you click on this dossier, you will see that just below there is a new element in the. No, go scroll down. Yeah, this was added to your screen, and you should you can add also a start and end date for the relation. Let's say somebody was a member of a party for some time, from one date to another date. You might want to say when the relation began and or when it ended to these dates. What you have to do is, you see it's circled in red. You have to enter something about what kind of relation exists between these two people in this case. So mentor, or I don't know. Well, how are these two guys related? I mean,
so I believe when the investigation, so now one of the officers was investigating the assassination of the former Foreign Affairs Minister, and he had to be exiled after things got hot. and mysterious deaths. Yeah.
I see. Well, you can just write you should write that the professor investigated the death
Yeah.
of Mr. Toroitic.
Of the former finance foreign.
I think that's now according to Moy, in relation to Moy.
Moy was known.
He was exiled by the former president.
The former president. Yeah. Not officially, though. He sought asylum.
I don't know how long a text you can enter in there. Let's see. Okay. But Toroic is the former president? No, it's the guy who was investigating about.
No.
Toroic is the former president whose foreign affairs minister was assassinated.
Ah, sorry. So Toroic was the minister or the president?
Toroic was the president. Yeah, it was the third. The second
Second president of the Republic of Kenya.
Ah, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, good, perfect. Thanks for. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is good. This says everything about the relationship between the two, and you can click on create, and it's gonna go through.
Okay.
Yeah, the blue button. You see, at the end of each page, there are buttons usually that. Be careful because EleQta does not record your actions until you have actually clicked on the blue buttons to confirm. Okay, it's not that by just typing something it will be recorded. You have to confirm at the end of the page always if it's a data entry or a dossier. Okay, so you can click on OK. It gives you a confirmation message once the data is entered, and you can see that next to each dossier you have buttons that allow to view, edit, and even delete a dossier. I think that only Susan has access to the deletion option because she's the supervisor. You might not have the delete option. If you create a dossier accidentally, you will have to tell Susan or me by giving us the number which you see on the left, D2, D3, D5, etc. And we will delete it for you. Okay. And now this dossier we just created is at the end of the list. So if you click on dossier number on top of the column, you will reverse the order of the dossiers on top of the column where it says dossier number on the left. And you will see the first dossier will become the what? And wow, it's good. We have 9,000 dossiers in EleQta. That's good. We passed the 9,000 mark. I didn't know that. Okay, so you can also edit the dossier by clicking on the little button there if you want to add more information or if you feel there's something wrong. Remember that we don't want to enter too much biased information in the dossiers. Okay, what the biased or doubtful or potentially fake information is more for the data entry parts of EleQta. The dossiers really have to remain as neutral as they can. Okay, also because we will keep them between one election and the other, they will remain in the database, etc. We can also rapidly, if you want, before we go for lunch, create a dossier for the party, the Roots party. So you click again on add a new dossier. And this time it's not going to be a dossier for a person, but it's going to be a dossier for an organization. There it is. And the subtype is a political party. So the full name of the party, yes, exactly. And then if there is an acronym, you should enter it below. Okay, good. Quick description if you want, if there's anything that can be said, but
So
Just a minute.
Yeah, rules.
is it recent?
seems to be around 7 years old, but only became active this election cycle.
Okay. Yeah, you can maybe say a party that gathered significant importance in the 2022 election,
Right, became
for example. But it doesn't. You know, it doesn't really matter. It's a political party, so the description is not really important. If it was the party of the ruling president or something like that, I would encourage you to put it in the description. But otherwise, it doesn't really matter. You have places to put the history, the foundation date if you want. Maybe if you know it's 7 years old, you can simply enter. One thing I forgot to tell you. You see what all the chronological fields in EleQta, they can have different degrees of precision. And you have those pink buttons next to the date of foundation where you can select how precise you want to be. If you only know the year, you click on the two Y's and you will see that the field changes on the right. Click on it. Does it work? You see, voila, the field has changed and now you can only enter a year. So it's 7 years old. We can say it was created in 2015, I guess. Voila. You have different levels of precision. Here you don't have time level, the time level, because it's not relevant. But in other chronological fields in EleQta, you also have minutes and seconds, hours and minutes, if you want. So there's another fourth level of precision that you can select or not. Okay, so now very rapidly we will simply create the relation between the professor and his party. And then we'll have lunch, I would say. So here you have to search for the professor's name. If you type the first letters of his name, it will appear. Voila, there it is. And then you still have to click on it. All right. And you see beneath that the relationship has appeared, and he's just a member of the party. So you can just write member in there. Or possibly even the head of the party.
Presidential candidate.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any questions or remarks about this dossier entry mechanism?
I have a question more on the platform.
Yes.
Would it work with a VPN, maybe in case the need arises? Would it
yes, it surely works with a VPN. We have not. That's interesting. Do you think it might be useful? Because it's a web platform, so it works on a VPN. It works with any type of internet access.
I'm saying maybe it could affect the integrity of the data being uploaded. Since when you mentioned that the time aspect, the time zone aspect has to be important, maybe I've shifted my VPN to maybe Singapore, in case, even though there's no that danger of an internet shutdown or something.
It might be a good idea. EleQta does not attract much attention from authorities, so it's hardly something that will be blocked. You know, with an action that targets only EleQta. So the thing I fear most, and it happens sometimes, is that internet access will be blocked entirely, and in that case, even VPN won't work. VPN is usually something that is used to go around websites that are blocked in individual countries. Maybe Facebook will be blocked in Kenya for some time, or other, big major web platforms. But EleQta is hardly something that gets individually blocked. It happened once, but it was a kind of mistake, and we settled it. But anyway, it will work on VPN if it's something that we never did before, but we might even want to, because VPN is something you have to pay for on your side usually. So unless you have access to free VPNs, but they usually don't work so well. So we'll see if the need arises. Maybe we can provide you with a VPN, but I'm not sure it's going to be necessary, because it's only going to be necessary if the Kenyan authorities target and block EleQta exclusively, which is not very likely, I think. We'll see. Hopefully not. It's not a tool that attracts a lot of users, so that's what basically attracts attention. You are entering sensitive data. The connection is protected, so what you do on the platform is encrypted, so nobody will see. Your usernames are also protected. Nobody can see what your name, except the system administrator, which is me. Not even your fellow team members can see what your real name is in the platform. So they will see your initials, I think. Yeah, or your user code, which is up there. You see next to Tarjirian 2 is Susan's username, and then she has a U11. She has a user code, which is something that her fellow team members will see, because when there is a data entry, you can see who has done it, and also a dossier. You can see who has created the dossier. So if you have anything you want to add or change, you can even contact the person and say, why did you say that Ruto is the favorite candidate, or something that is susceptible of interpretation, etc. I want to change it. But yeah, we'll see what happens with the internet. And I think the university could even provide maybe some sort of VPN if we need. So you see, dossier entry is a pretty simple process. You won't have to go too much through it, because you already have 150 dossiers for Kenya, which means that the main actors are already there. We will maybe rapidly check if everyone important is in there before the briefings are over. But we're basically pretty fine with this. What about the lunch break? You think it's time?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You let me know. We're not gonna. I mean, we can organize our day the way you feel best. Also, about the time we end the session, I am flexible to a certain degree. There's one point where everybody gets very tired and it doesn't work anymore. And also the lunch break, it can last as long as you want. Please consider that this afternoon we will at least maybe need a couple of hours, if not maybe 3 hours, to finish what we have to do in the afternoon. So your lunch break can last 1 hour, it can last 2 hours. You decide. You can even let me know when you're back. I'll be home having lunch. So if you don't, do you have an idea yet of how long you want to take for your lunch break? Or
yeah, we can come back at 2.
Sorry?
We can come back at 2 p.m.
Okay. So 1 hour, 15 minutes. Okay, all right. Which is 1 p.m. here. Okay, great. We'll meet again around that time. Meanwhile, you have a great lunch, and I'm really sad I'm not there with you. Yeah.
Should I be concerned about my browsing history, or is not able to access it? I delete it now.
I see. The last time I was in Kenya, it was an incredible adventure for me to be there. And a few days ago, I had this thing where it was really pleasant in Nairobi at this time of the year. You know, here it's super hot, and I was reading your little message. Well, just dress up. It's a bit cold. I was really, yeah. I really envy you. Yeah. So you have a nice lunch, and you let me know when you're back. You maybe send me a little, give me a call through WhatsApp too. I will disconnect from the meeting. But yeah, let me know on WhatsApp because I'll be in the other room having lunch. So now that we have a dedicated room for kitchen, it's a big change. Yeah.
Alright, thank you.
And Dixon, you also have a good lunch, huh? Solitary, like me. Okay. Remember to stop the recording, Susan, before you
Okay.
disconnect, because I'm afraid that if you don't do it, it's not going to be saved.